Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how I start adding the thin color glazes on this painting. If you haven't watched the other videos about how I've gotten to this point, I recommend doing so. This will just focus on adding the color, the first of many color layers by the way, to this one particular olive right here. So I hope you enjoy. So let me tell you a little bit about my palette for today's glazing. I'm using this mixture here is olive. It's just olive green. I normally don't use, I normally mix all of my colors, but for the sake of ease and transparency, this particular olive is very transparent. I use olive out of the tube. Plus I've also mixed in some Alizarin Crimson and then a little bit of ultramarine blue just to darken it, because the olive green out of the tube does not have enough red in it. This is just pure Alizarin Crimson, excuse me. I've added a little bit of French ultramarine blue as well to darken it, but only in certain spots. So it's basically just Alizarin Crimson. This color here, and these are my main two glazes. That's the main glaze for the olive, that's the main glaze for the pimento. This is just this color, and I've added yellow to it. That's all I've basically done. I've also added a little bit of French ultramarine blue to dull down the yellow or the orange, because it's the opposite of it on the color wheel. Over here, same thing. I've taken this color and I've added yellow to it to lighten it, and that's pretty much all I've done there. I've added a little bit of red, and then over here I've used a little bit more white just to get a certain lighter area, a lighter color for certain areas. Over here I've just basically mixed up a light bluish green highlight color. Now, I don't really worry too much about detailing the highlights at this point, but I do start to maybe make some small ones here and there just to keep track of where they are and build them up over time. So that's really it. Those are the only colors we'll be using for this today. So let's get to it. So I'm using mineral spirits only here still, as I did in the previous layers, as my medium, and I'm thinning it as little as possible. I want the paint to be basically just in enough that I can spread it around, because it's still going on very thin. Even if I didn't thin it down with a lot of medium, it's still going to be spread around very thin. So I'm basically just using just enough mineral spirits so that I can, honestly, just get the paint off the brush. And the goal is to be able to spread it around. And then when I use my mop brush, as you'll see in a moment, to smooth it out, if you have too much medium, it will just wipe the paint right off, which is also fine. It just takes, you have to redo your work over and over. So you want it to go, it's sort of a learning process. It just takes practice, but you want it to go on as thick as possible, but not too thick so as to not be transparent. So that may not be all that helpful until you've actually tried it. It'll make sense immediately. You want to be able to see through to your underpainting, so it needs to be thin enough to do that, but it needs to be not so thin so as to wipe off completely. I'm just going back down here and getting some more paint on the brush. It does not take very much paint at all. The paint, because it is spreading on so thin, it goes a long way. Now, all you want to do is just evenly cover all of the area that you're going to be working on. So I'm going to cover this entire olive, or the green portion of the olive, with this olive mixture that's, as I mentioned, olive green, alizarin crimson, and a little bit of blue, French ultramarine blue. That's just to darken it slightly. I used very little ultramarine blue. I just need a little bit more here on my brush. Now I've done this exact same method on these other olives already, and then just some random places on the glass that I'm just trying to get an early start on. You don't really have to worry about painting inside the lines too much here. All the hard work that you've done up to this point is going to help pay off, and that'll help give you a neat little effect without blending on your edges. It'll give you a nice little blurring effect. Okay, I'm gonna grab my mop brush here, clean it off with a paper towel. All I'm going to do is just basically smooth this paint out now that I just applied. I don't want ridges. I just want it to be basically nice even coat. Now here's where you'll notice if it's too thin, you will just wipe it. You'll just wipe all the paint right back off, and it'll create a undesirable effect of just sort of washing the paint around. I don't really know how to explain that, unfortunately. You'll definitely notice what I'm talking about once you do it too thinly on your own. But if you can see, hopefully the camera shows this, this has basically just been scrubbed in, sort of. I'm not really trying to drag the paint. I'm just sort of dabbing it. I am dragging it in some instances, but as a rule, you don't really want to drag the paint around. You just sort of want to dab this on, and then I keep cleaning the brush on here so that you just have sort of an even distribution of the paint on there. And that's all you need to do there. So I'm done with that. Now I'm going to take my small round brush, which I have mixed up the other lighter color that you saw on here, and I'm going to use mineral spirits again, and I'm going to get that on my brush, and I'm just going to take the lightest places, just like I did in the first, when I was working with the umber layer and when I was working in the black and white layer, the grisaille. I'm just going to go back in here and re-lighten the lightest places. So there is a shadow line right there. I'm going to just basically put this paint on here. Now this paint that I'm applying right now is much more opaque than it's still diluted, but it's going to be going on a little bit more opaque because it's going to be blended in. So you want this to be diluted as little as possible also. You just really need to be able to work the paint. Is really the only advice I can give you on this one, and I'm just using mineral spirits. So you want to apply, like I said, only in the lightest places. So I'm going to reestablish this line here. You can do really subtle changes this way. Now, like in this area right here, for example, there won't be a line there. I'll blend that in, and you'll see in a moment. And once it's the effect of doing that multiple times that is what makes this style of painting very unique and very useful, in fact. Now, for example, this is lighter here, but it also changes color as it fades down. So I'm not going to put this color all the way down. I'm going to blend that, and as I build up the layers, I'll actually add more blue over here. You can't see the reference photo in that, but at this point, I'm not really worried about having the colors exactly right. I just want them to basically be light and dark, except with the appropriate colors now instead of gray. And as we add more layers, this color will be more green and more green and more green. As it is right now, you can still get the effect of the gray showing, which is much more evident that as you get to the next layer, you'll see that how much of the underlayer was actually still showing through, even if it may not be that obvious. So I'm just going back through here, like I said, and lightening just the lightest areas according to my reference drawing or picture. So a little bit in here. Okay, now the rest of this, I'm trying to work quickly. This stuff dries relatively fast. Now I'm going to add a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to do this first. Now I'm taking this small mop brush. I'm going to make sure it's clean. And then I'm going to take this, just like I did before, and lightly scrub this back in here. Now I had a little bit of white paint on there, messed that up. That's okay though. And you can see how that line disappears. It creates a very shadow, which will just get better and better as the layers build. So I'm going to take this. I would consider what I'm doing light pressure to medium pressure. I'm basically blending this. Well, I am blending this in. I'm sort of scrubbing it down, and I'm using it almost like you would use a blender, like a paper blender when you're doing pencil sketching, when you're doing shading. If you've ever done that, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm just basically drawing this as a smudge. This is really a smudge tool, is what I'm doing here. I don't want the paint to be. I don't want there to be lines. I don't want there to be ridges. If there's going to be a sharp line or anything like that, that's going to be done in the very last layer on my detail layers, because on my very last layers, I'll do much less blending because you want your highlights and those need to be true, and that's how you can ruin a painting, by overblending the very last layer. And you will hear people say don't overblend, and that's very good advice. However, in this style of painting, the initial layers, you really want them to be blended very well, because they need to be very smooth, and you're going to correct that overblending look, if that even makes sense, what I'm talking about. It probably will to some and not to others. That will be corrected as the layers build upon themselves. Now there's a little bit of reflected light down here, so I'm not even going to add paint directly in there. I'm just going to use what's left over on the brush and sort of smudge it in there. And that's actually going to be all that I need to do there. So it's a very simple process. I'm just going to correct some of these other ones I did really quickly. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take my round brush again, and I'm going to get a little bit of a lighter mixture, the one where I showed you that had a little bit more white in it, and I'm going to reestablish this area right here is a little bit lighter, so I'm going to put this line back in there. Just, I don't want to lose my my original reference. I'm going to lighten this a lot. Now you have to remember, although I am lightening this, you don't have to have this exactly correct, and nor do you even want to try. You don't want to have the paint on here that thick. You just have to understand that you're working in layers. It's not supposed to be finished after this. This is only the first color layer. I am doing it only in very certain places, just because I don't want to lose those places, and I want to lighten them as you go, and you need to keep certain areas lighter. The lightest areas you need to keep lighter. Okay, so that's really all I need to do. There are some drops in here that I will add later. I'm going to add just a couple of them now, just so that there's there's a variety of them, and so as you get further along, some of them will be more developed and some of them will be less developed, which will give you a good sense of just having a variety. Okay, so that's all I need to do there. I'm going to go back in and blend in this lighter color very slightly. You have to be careful when you do this. You'll just basically wipe it all off. That's another thing. It's a sort of a judgment call. You'll learn to add the lighter areas towards the end. So you can see that that has a very subtle effect. Now I'm just going to take the edges off of these here. I'm using very light pressure at this point. I'm not trying to drag the paint around at all. I just basically want to get those lines in there so that I know where they are for later. Now once I've done that, I'm going to take my larger mop brush again. Now I'm just going to dab it on there. I don't want those little details that I put, I don't want them to have ridges, bumps at all. I want them to be completely gone, and it takes them down and sort of blends them in at the same time. Same thing over here. I don't want any of these things to have bumps. Okay, so that's it for that part, and now I'm going to show you how easy it is to add the same thing with the Alizarin Crimson. I'm cleaning my brush. I'm just going to use the same brush. You can use a different brush. It's your preference. So I'm just cleaning the brush. I'm going to now do the exact same thing, except it's just going to be with my other color, my Alizarin Crimson. So I'm getting mineral spirits back on my brush now, and now I have the Alizarin Crimson mixture that I have. Now I'm just going to spread it on here. You don't have to worry about the lines. You're covering all of the area, and this is where you'll see about your mixture. You can see here in the corner, like where I am especially, how it's thick enough to cover the gray, but it's not thick enough so that you can't still see through it. I can still see everything that I painted underneath it, which is what you want. And that'll be more obvious once I get this finished, but it probably already is. It's just hard for me to tell exactly how well it shows up in the picture, but getting a little bit more paint here. I'm going to go around the edges. Now again, these edges are actually going to end up being a lot darker, and I'll darken those later with the complementary color, like a darker purple blue color. But for now, it's the first layer. We don't need to worry about all of our colors aren't going to be exactly right. We don't need these edges to be exactly perfect. Or you can make them exactly perfect. In my particular style, I like to have them not exactly perfect because it just looks more realistic. I think a lot of times in life, we think we see, or in painting, we think we see something that we don't necessarily see, and you sort of have to learn to distinguish the difference between those two. You'll hear a lot of people say, you know, paint what you see, which is absolutely true, but you have to really learn how to see, and they don't really mention that. And a lot of people say, well, I did paint what I see and it doesn't look right. And I've learned that it's because we're not really seeing what we think we're seeing, and you have to, just like everything else, it's a learned, you have to learn how to see from a painter's perspective. Babbling on a little bit, I suppose. Okay, I'm being a little bit more careful than I probably need to be right here, because I'm just going to end up smearing this anyway, but there's a lot of variety in the color here. So I'm mixing a little bit of the red into the green. When it gets towards the end, I'll actually really work on that. That's one of my favorite parts of the painting these olives, is there's a really cool orange color at the border there between the pimento and the actual olive. Looks really cool. But I don't really need to worry about it as much as I am right now on this layer. So I'm just going to continue on here. It is hard to avoid, it is a mistake, and it's hard to avoid it, and that is trying to make everything look right away. You want it to look, it's like, wow, I'm putting color and it looks cool and I've done all this hard work already, but you have to resist that urge as much as possible and realize that this is a multi-stage process. Okay, so I've got that on there. I'm going to take my mop brush, I'm going to wipe the green paint off, and I'm just going to take those ridges off the same as I did when I was doing my green. You want to wipe this, Alizarin Crimson will get everywhere. It doesn't even really matter if it gets into the green at this point. You're going to end up adding a lot more red to those olives because they're nowhere near red enough anyway. So you want that to just be smooth. Now you can see, I'm being careful not to mop it around, I'm just sort of dabbing. Now you can see that it sort of flattens it, but you can still see everything that I painted underneath. All the light areas and the dark areas are all still there. It sort of brings them closer together as far on the value range, but we're about to fix that. That's what the lighter shade is for. So now I've got that. I'm going to actually go in now and blend some of these areas a little better with this flat brush. This is just a soft bristle brush. I'm going to take these edges that I was talking about and just sort of take the precision out of them. It was just blurring them in. There's no real crisp lines here. This should all be very blurry. And again, this is one particular aspect, these transitions between these colors, that'll be addressed in much more detail in the very last detail layers. These will be done perfect. For now, we just want them to sort of blend together. I'm trying to work quickly, and it's causing me to talk quickly as well. So now I'm taking this my round brush again, and I'm going to get that other mixture that I had, which is just the Alizarin Crimson and the yellow, and also blue, but so it's basically an orange color. And I'm going to go back in and lighten the areas that have already been lightened. I'm basically just painting over what you can see underneath the painting, except that I'm doing it with this more correct color. So that's what I'm doing here. Just going to lay this color down. And one reason well, it doesn't look right to me because I can see the reference, which you can't. This area over here all is going to get darker, and it will get darker as I add more layers. Right now, there's definitely not enough contrast in here, but that's just, again, that's not something I can fix, nor do I want to try to fix right now. That comes with layers, and that'll get better as I go. So I'm going to continue adding this. For the reflection up here, same process. You want to be accurate, but not, at this point, as I've mentioned, it's going to change. There's going to be 5, 6, 7, who knows? I don't know yet how many layers I'm going to do on this painting. They won't all be all over layers, but okay, so that's basically what I've done. I've got those highlights there. I'm going to take my same mop brush again. It's going to be cleaned off. It's got green in it. It doesn't really matter at this point. Or you can clean it off. It's up to you. It doesn't. I've wiped it down. It's fine. Green and the red and the green go together well anyway. I'm blending this in now. I'm also blending this in the direction of the features that are on this pimento, so that any little imperfections that you do have in your blending will be the right direction. And that's one way to get detail without, that's a natural way to use your brush to get detail without having to paint every detail, because the more stuff you can get with brushwork, the more realistic things will look, and just the more, it'll just look better. I'm sorry I babbled there, but I only get one chance at recording this. Okay, so now I've blended that in, and I've got some areas here that need to be brought up a little bit more. So when I say brought up, I mean to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take that same mixture, I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow to it. Okay, and then I'm going to go right back into what I've done here, just slightly, in those couple of spots. Now again, the only reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to get a head start for later. You don't need to do too much. This is nowhere near right. I'm just making sure that I have 3 shades of color there, which is something I don't really have time to explain. But okay, so now I'm going to slightly blend that back in. Each time you blend this in, you're really flattening the ridges in the paint, but you're also flattening out the color and the contrast as well, which is why people tell you not to overblend. And that's very good advice. However, as I've mentioned, in this particular method, it's not directly, doesn't directly apply. I'm cleaning off my mop brush. I'm going to now just dab this very lightly, just to smooth the remaining edges, and that's all we have. Now I've done that over all 3 of these olives. It hasn't taken me that long at all. It's much quicker at this point. The work is much quicker at this point than it is in previous layers, and it's much more rewarding, and it's very cool. I hope this sort of clarifies the method here. You have to be really patient. You can see the colors don't look right. I'm not worried about it at all. The colors will absolutely look much better after you add you have to build the layers, and that's why it's not that important to worry necessarily about getting the exact mixtures on your palette right away. You can, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. However, it won't really matter until you get towards the end. You want to have a basic color just to start building up the paint layers to give you the effect that you want, and that's really all you're trying to achieve at this point. So you can be very detailed with your color mixtures if you want. It's really not necessary. The last 2 or 3 layers that I do, my palette has a whole variety of colors as I'm detailing, because I want all my highlights especially to be the right colors, and I want those colors to be pure. So it's a process, and I'll maybe do another video on this. I'm not sure if I will or not, but I'm going to continue this process for at least 4 to 5 more layers, and then I'll start doing very detailed color mixes on my palette, and I'll also be working on the glass as I go, and the background. So watch my website and my Facebook page to see this painting when it's finished, and eventually I'm going to do a video for purchase, and it's going to be on a similar style painting, although it might be somewhat simpler. So I appreciate your time. I'm sorry I'm talking fast, trying to make it as short as I can, and thanks for watching my videos.